Imagine that I told you that there's a BMW sports car that cost $64,000 when it came out, but now you can get it for the price of an FRS or a BRZ. This is the BMW Z4M, and it has the S54 engine from the BMW E46 M3, one of the most legendary sports cars to ever come out. Well, that was fun. Except this is smaller, feels more nimble, and has everything the M3 had, but in a more compact package. But these cars didn't sell well at all. I mean, at all. It didn't help that this came out right before the Great Recession in 2008, and that in today's money would cost almost $100,000. So why was this car so overlooked? What was its main competitor? And why you should think about picking one of these up today? So let's talk about it. Huge thanks to DraftKings for sponsoring today's video. Tournament time is officially here. So go ahead and fill your brackets and place your bets with who you think will rise to the top with my partners at DraftKings Sportsbook. Right now, all new customers who bet just $5 will receive $150 in bonus bets instantly. And that's right, new customers who bet just $5 will receive $150 in bonus bets instantly. And you can stay in on the action with your $150 bonus bets on DraftKings same game parlays for a shot at an even bigger payout. You can combine multiple bets together for the same game, including number of points scored, number of rebounds by your favorite player, and much more. And if sports betting is not available in your state, don't worry. You can still join in on the fun with DraftKings Daily Fantasy and have a chance to win cash prizes. So download the DraftKings Sportsbook app now. New customers use my promo code ThatDude and bet just $5 on any wager and get $150 in bonus bets instantly. That's promo code ThatDude only at DraftKings Sportsbook. Hello and welcome to the BMW Z4M. Now the Z4M, okay, if you never heard of it, I completely understand because there weren't that many of them in the United States especially, but at the same time, this uses the S54 engine, which is from the E46 M3, which is interesting because the entire front suspension and subframe and stuff like that is from an E36 M3, but then the rear is from an E46. So it's a whole mumbo jumbo of a bunch of stuff. So a few things. Why nobody buy the Z4M? One, not a lot of people knew about it. Two, apparently, allegedly, when the car was bone stock, the suspension was so stiff that it was unbearable to drive. So a lot of people, what they'll do is they put Bilstein dampers on it and stuff like that to ease the ride. So the convertible Z4, not so rigid. Z4M, it's twice as rigid as the Roadster. So it fixes a lot of the Roadster's issues. So if you just want that nice two-seater BMW, if you're a big BMW fan, yeah, it is weird that a lot of people didn't go for these and just do these minor adjustments to them. But what also did not help the Z4M, it was 2007, right? Guess what happened in 2008? Like the worst recession. Along with that, this car was $10,000 more than a Porsche Cayman. Now, if you're a sports car fan in this niche, which one are you gonna buy? You're probably gonna buy the Cayman. And at the same time with 2008's recession, yeah, you can't justify that because it's $60,000 in 2007. So if you think about it, it's basically $84,000 today. This is not an $84,000 car. It's just not. Is it bad? No, I don't think it's bad, but it outpriced itself. It wasn't well known. At the same time, its timing could not have been worse. And I think a lot of people saw this car, they probably just didn't do their research and realize how much better it was from the Z4, and they're like, oh, it's just a Z4 with a hard top. Because I think that's what I would have done. I think that's what a lot of people would have done. But it's fascinating how in car culture, how car values go like this, and how this was almost a $100,000 car. And now we look at it today and we're like, there's no way. The Z4, you know, when it first came out, it was the sequel to the Z3, right? The Z3, I always known it as the GoldenEye car, the James Bond GoldenEye car. There was the Z8 as well, but you don't really see many of those. There's a Z3, then there's Z3M, and then there was also the clown shoe, right? And the clown shoe, people hated it. And then now it's a collector item. It's funny how the market works sometimes. But this one, I find extremely interesting because I think it had great potential of what was to come later, where the next one ended up having the N54 turbo engine. This was a nice in-between with the E46 engine. Now it revs super high, basically 8,000 RPM. Your seating position's very good, but the really interesting thing about it is filming this car is really strange because the proportions are really out there. Front, basically long hood like a roadster, but with a hardtop, and the hardtop looks like it's meant to be there. It doesn't look out of whack, because sometimes when you do basically, I don't know, when you take a convertible and you put a hardtop on it, it doesn't always just work. This, it works a lot, especially with the rear windshield coming down to the back, and yeah, it's just a good looking car. It's funny, when you're in the interior, lots of wood on the dash, big fat piece of wood, and then in the center console, you also have a different mode, like sport mode, normal mode, but the main thing you notice is visibility. There's not too much of it. The rear windshield's very small. It's interesting because even though it's not the turbo engine like the N54, it still has a good linear power band. It came with 330 crank horsepower back in 2007. So if you think about it, that was probably a pretty big deal, having this tiny little car. So if you really want to think about it, the Z4M is a 2-seat E46 M3, if you could really be convincing. When it comes down to it, it's a really interesting car, especially proportionally. And most of the time when you see them, this is the first time I've ever seen one, most people really don't know what it is, or they think it's fake. That's another funny thing. Some people are like, oh yeah, like you S54 swapped to Z4. It's like, no, it's a real one. But since there's so few of them, it's kind of hard to believe. What's really fascinating is that it's really good to keep this car in the revs, because rod bearings and the S54 are unfortunately seen as consumables, because if you don't, they just wear out super easily. All right. Okay, yeah, second gear revving out to 8,000 is really satisfying. As with most BMW shifters, they have this, I don't know how to describe it, it's like a squishy feel. What I like too is the gearing, you can tell it was meant to put the power down really well. When you go into second gear, it ramped up, whole car squatted down and went. And when I went into third gear, had a little bit of delay, but it ramped in the power. So one thing I do want to note is that there is a sport mode, sport button. When you drive it, the number one thing you notice right off the bat is the pedal is almost overly sensitive. It's so much. Like I breathed on the pedal. Like just, and the whole car bucked. So here's a weird circle life story. The last time I hung out with the owner of this, he had an SN95 Mustang back in Richmond, Virginia, back in like 2015. He heard that I was coming back up and he was like, hey man, you should totally drive this. Remember me? And what a step up compared to that. Not that the SN95 is like a terrible car, but it's a great first car to kind of get into things. But this is a really good level up in my opinion. As for the seats, basically stereotypical BMW seats, nothing bad about them. It's got the nice Crayola smell, as most BMWs do. Oh yeah. That is really, really nice. Because typically when you're in the M3, right, you have that back seat in the back, you have a little bit more space. And not that that's a bad thing, but this feels like a sports car. And that's what I really like about it, is you have that confidence. And at the same time, you might notice a lot of people are taking the normal Z4s and starting to turn them into drift missiles. And the last one, it had like 100 horsepower less before this model. So that's a big jump. It's so interesting when BMW makes like two-seater sports cars, they always go balls out, like crazy difference compared to the other model. Really smooth. It's very predictable, even though it has a short wheelbase. That was one thing I was worried about, is it's got a little bit of short wheelbase, how's it gonna do? And it's very, very predictable. So Z4M, kind of to me an unsung hero, because just doing some of these, like, it feels really smooth, really buttery. As long as you drive it well, your maintenance is probably gonna be pretty good. But like we said earlier, you gotta know these things. If you don't know these things, then you might have a bad time. Huge thanks to Ben so much. He's a veteran now. He has 2 car reviews under his belt, so take that. And along with that, I upload on Tuesdays, Thursdays, and Sundays, and I'll see you guys next time. Take it easy. Have a wonderful day. Goodbye.